Hello knitters, I'm going to show you how to do a backwards loop increase, left slanting and right slanting. This is an excellent increase for when you need a little bit more stretch in your fabric than a make one would provide. So I've just created a little swatch here, and I have put 2 stitch markers, so a plain one to indicate that it is right leaning, and kind of a more flashy one to remind me that this is the backwards loop, left leaning, because as I go on you will see that that needs to be worked through the back loop on the following rows or rounds. And so this little flashier one is just to remind me to pay attention and to stop at that point and work through the back loop, as opposed to as you typically knit or purl when you work through the front loop of a stitch. So first off, I'm just going to work to my first marker. So this was the plain marker to remind me that it is the backwards loop right leaning. So before I slip that marker, I'm going to do that right leaning stitch. So you are going to make a loop with your working yarn. You're not going to involve any stitches or any strands. And to do that, you are going to hold your yarn so that it loops over top of your finger, and you're just going to catch that loop, and you can see the working yarn is crossing in front of the loop here. It's in the front and the rest of the loop is behind. And pull that tight. I'll try and work English style here, so it might be easier to see. So this is what this right leaning increase looks like. On the following row or round, whether or not you have the right side facing or the wrong side facing, it doesn't matter. You're going to work through the front loop of this new stitch. So I'm going to slip my marker, and then I'm going to work to my next flashy marker here. Doesn't matter what pattern you're working, or whether it's knitting or purling or ribbing, it doesn't matter. And this time the yarn from the work goes over top of your finger this way, and then you're going to twist and stick it on the needle. And now you can see your working yarn is crossing behind the rest of this loop. So the right leaning, this yarn attached to your yarn ball, was in front of this strand, and now for the left leaning, it's behind. And on the following row or round, we're going to work through this back loop, and you also work through the back loop if you are going to have the wrong side facing on the following row. So I was actually supposed to slip that marker first before I made that stitch, so you'll get to see that again. So you're twisting it the opposite way so that the working yarn is behind, and then we will work to the end. Now I'm working this swatch flat, so I'm going to turn it over so that the wrong side is facing. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, and I'm going to purl to 1 stitch before the marker, because then I will stop and show you what to do with that backwards loop increase. So here we have arrived at the backwards loop increase, and if you remember, this flashy marker is to remind me to stop and take a look at the stitch and work it through the back loop. So if you were knitting, you would knit through the back loop. Since I'm purling, I'm going to purl through the back loop. So I'm going to get through the back loop there and purl it. And you can see it kind of adds a little extra twist, which is what we want because the backwards loop left leaning tends to be looser than the right leaning. Slip that marker, work to the next marker, and slip this one. And we are going to work through the front loop of the right leaning and then purl to end. All right, I'll give you a little look-see here. Right leaning, and then on this side is the left leaning. It just kind of slants a little bit over to the left. I'll do that one more time and then I'll show you what it looks like to work on the front side as if you were working in the round. So this is the right leaning increase, and the yarn is coming behind my finger and over, and I catch it, and the working yarn is in front of the loop, coming forward. It wants to come towards the front of the work. That's the right leaning. So now the yarn is going to come over top of my finger and behind. I'm going to catch it from the back of the loop. And now my working yarn wants to go towards the back. It's behind the loop and it wants to head to the back. That's the left leaning. I'm going to pretend that I'm working in the round. I'm just going to slide my stitches across the cable. Okay, I've knit to the stitch before the marker. And this is the right leaning increase, so I'm going to just knit through the front loop. If there was instruction to knit front and back, you would just knit front and back, both the left and the right leaning the same way, and not worry too much about the slanting. To my marker that reminds me to work through the back loop, so I'm going to catch the back loop here and knit it and work across. And you can see the left leaning side there and the right leaning side. Like I said before, you do want some slack in those stitches to provide the stretch that you need in this kind of shoulder shaping that I do, but nothing too floppy in there. I hope that helps.